What's up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite New York Jets subscription podcast, Badlands. I'm your host, Joe Caporoso, joined as always by Connor Rodgers. And for the first time since the middle of September, Connor and I are recording a post-game victory podcast on a Sunday as the New York Jets beat the Jacksonville Jaguars for their fourth win of the season, only their second win on a Sunday, 32-25, because the Jets never have normal scores, of course. There's always some scoregami action. Connor, we're talking about a win on a Sunday. How you doing? How you feeling?
Pretty good. Eventful game. There's been quietly a lot of offense for the Jets in their last couple of games, it feels like. And, it did have all of a sudden a little bit of the same feel as some of the other ones where it's like, man, what hole is going to really fall out here, like bottom out here? Is it going to be that the defense can't get a stop or they can't get the points or they leave too much time? And it felt like a little bit of all of that, but at the end of the day, it didn't matter. And the Jets took care of business against a team that's, really bad, all things considered. But at the end of the day, there was a lot of actual positive takeaways from this Jets team, as we talked about. Monster day from Davante Adams. Rodgers just physically moving around and how that's opening up the offense. And I think an offensive line that, he gave a lot of credit to it in the postgame is playing really, really well. And those are sustainable pieces when you talk about Olu and Simpson and Tittman and AVT. And we'll kind of see where things go with Moses down the line. But, and then Sauce kind of gets the piano off his back or whatever it is by getting a pick. And, I said on postgame, when you do little things the right way throughout the course of a game, sometimes you're rewarded because people will be like, oh, it was a gift. And I've seen a lot of the, outbursts because after the game in an interview, he said that it was up there with being drafted and stuff. I think a lot of people miss that he caught that interception and gave the ball to his mom in the stands. And I don't know how often his mom gets to see him play. So that's kind of the evil of the internet. You get quoted by something and people, instead of watching the video or reading what's there, they just kind of jump to conclusions. So I hope that clears some of that up. Good for Sauce. Really need his confidence back. And I think that's a big thing. And yeah, it's, listen, do we want the Jets to have the best draft position possible at this moment? Yes. But do I want the young guys to have moments and start to build confidence for next year with a different regime? Absolutely. And there were some takeaways like that today.
Yeah. I mean, look, they were going to win another game at some point.
It's the inevitable.
They are substantially more talented than Jacksonville. Like, in a normal world, you'd like them to win this game by 17 points. And they sweated it out all the way until the end. And I think it's a good call out on the Sauce stuff. It's been a hard year for him. I think we've been hard on him like many people have.
Yeah.
But you want to be as good as you should be in the coming years. You want guys like that to learn from a hard season and be a foundational building block, not someone you have to trade away. So when Garrett is able to get in the end zone and, draw a big penalty and have some nice moments, and Sauce is able to finally get that interception and have a couple decent plays down the stretch and get his confidence, you want them to carry that into next season. And it's not bad habit to win a close game in particular. They needed to win a one-possession game. It's been a long time since they've done that, and they got it done. And the offense, like you said, has been objectively good the last 2 weeks. Rodgers looks healthier post-bye week. I think he ran for 45 yards today, threw for 289. Davante was exceptional. He had 198 yards. Probably could have had 250 because he even left a play or two on the field, I would say. He's been really good since they traded for him and proven to still be really good. I think those first couple of weeks, he probably wasn't actually 100% healthy. Since then, he's been ripping off a ton of big plays, and he was the best player down the stretch in this game and is still really capable of being an elite playmaker in the NFL, especially when you're going against a defense like Jacksonville's. I don't want to get too far over our skis. Jacksonville is terrible. They have a terrible defense.
But they have good pass rushers.
They have good pass
rushers.
I see
Olu and guys like that pitch shutouts again, and Rodgers is after the game saying, I felt like I had so much time back there. Those are quantifiable positives, in my opinion. I agree, but you see in the back end how brutal they are in busted coverages.
Yes, and good on the Jets for taking advantage of it, right? That's where you get that experience with Rodgers and Davante. They know how to, beat the blitz on third down. They are so comfortable with the fade route and a certain collection of things that they've just done together for so long that at times it's impossible to defend. And there is something really there with the offensive line. It's been an encouraging season with the offensive line. And for any GM or head coach to come in knowing that that is in place with young players in particular, that's a huge selling point, because you don't have that right, nothing else really matters. And there's going to be a much more robust and interesting discourse about what happens with Rodgers in the quarterback position in the next few weeks because of these last two games. Now, my opinion on it is, let's not overreact to one or two games. Let's let him play the full 17. Let's see what happens against the Rams, who are playing for a playoff spot. Let's see what happens against the Bills, who look like the best team in football right now. How does the offense look in those games? Who do you hire? Are you allowing them to make the decision about what happens with quarterback? It's a bigger, more complicated conversation than just on field. Nobody's saying that in a vacuum, on field, Aaron Rodgers is not likely to be better than Tyrod Taylor or Justin Fields or Sam Howell or a rookie quarterback. All things being equal, even this version of him would be better, but it's a more complicated conversation when you're turning the page on a new regime, and you don't need to make a split-second decision with 3 games left in the season because you beat Mac Jones in Jacksonville 32-25. Also, it's always great to beat Mac Jones. The Jets needed to beat Mac Jones.
They don't ever beat Mac Jones.
A lot of taunting coming from Mac against the Jets. Very bad defense. I don't know how you could be a Jet fan and not be happy watching Sauce get a game-ending interception off Mac Jones, even if you're annoyed that right now they're picking 8th instead of picking 6th or 7th, which I think is the ramifications, because they didn't get any other help they needed, right? The Giants aren't winning another game. The Raiders aren't winning another game. The Panthers couldn't beat the Cowboys. As you mentioned before we recorded, the Titans and Jaguars have to play again, so there'll be something there. The Jets were probably always headed to 4-13 or 5-12 and picking somewhere between 6th and 9th. Right? There wasn't a lot that was likely to happen. They would have to get a ton of breaks to be picking in the top 2 and be getting a crack at what is considered one of the top 2 quarterbacks. So this doesn't feel like when they beat the Rams and lost out on Trevor Lawrence. No. And again, look how that played out. So I don't know. We've been in this situation for so long that, and again, it could be an age thing, I don't have the energy to be upset about losses, nor am I surprised that ultimately with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae playing like that, they were able to beat that version of the Doug Peterson and Mac Jones Jacksonville Jaguars. So I think it's good overall for a lot of the young players in New York to see that. I also don't want to overreact and be like, well, now Rodgers is the guy for the next 2 years because they beat Jacksonville by 7. Who's going to finish 3-14? So you got to try to find the happy balance. Where do you feel right now? I mean, we have more time to talk about this in War Room and everything this week with the Rodgers discourse and some of the reaction you're hearing and seeing from it.
I think it could be a little frustrating, right? Because you perfectly encapsulated it. This is not the game to make your runaway opinion on. But I think, to be fair to Rodgers, but it's also part of his undoing himself. When you just look at how things have gone this year, and you evaluate the tape of what version we've seen of him against Jacksonville, Miami, Seattle, you could even argue the Colts, right? So that's 4 games in a row right now. Clearly, he was hurt for a large portion of this season. And that's the argument where you go, well, he was hurt. See, that's the problem. But there's also the other half of it that's the problem. He's a quarterback in his 40s who he gets hurt now, right? Let's not forget, before the torn Achilles, when he dealt with the thumb injury, where he wasn't himself, when he was still with the Packers, by the way, not with the Jets. And these things happen in the NFL, especially to older players. And I'm not in the building, so I can't say this for sure, but it seems like Rodgers is a guy, after we heard some of the, maybe wasn't interested in getting MRIs and stuff, where it was a detriment to the team. What if, this is kind of a dangerous game to play, but do you think the Jets can beat, a Denver, Minnesota, or New England with Tyrod Taylor? I don't know. But the point is, Rodgers hurt was a bad quarterback for a decent portion of this year. And now Rodgers healthy, while he's not Aaron Rodgers MVP, with Devontae Adams out there and a good offensive line, he's capable. He's capable. Yeah. And to be fair to Aaron Rodgers, the Jets had lost their 3 previous games where they scored at least 21 points in all 3 of those games. And today they had to get to 30 to get the win. The defense has been I guess the
So
nicest
bad.
way you could say it, like bad,
bad.
like untimely, but they're bad, right? Like they're generally an irresponsible.
Banged up today too, but still really bad.
Yeah, but they were bad when they were healthy. So like
I know.
that's the caveat, is that they're an irresponsible unit. McDonald had some wow rushes off the jump, but they don't rush the passer consistently enough. They need somebody next to Quinnen in the worst way, because teams could just limit him when no one's next to him. And this is the Kinlaws and the Clemens and the Solomon Thomases of the world. Solomon Thomas, ironically, had a sack today. I just, Reddick's done nothing. I mean, what else do you want us to say?
I feel like he's getting worse week over week at this point, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
He isn't true, like, get me to the offseason, but I don't know if he's hurt, but I feel like Quincy's been abnormally quiet in recent weeks. Like, we've seen a lot of Sherwood
Not
running around.
Explosive.
And Sherwood, like, again, I like him better as like a situational rotational player, because he makes a lot of tackles, but he also misses a lot of tackles and makes a lot of mistakes. But at least he's flying around playing with energy. But Quincy, he's been not himself. He's not been the guy. Not the guy he was last year. But Jalen Mills, we got 2 interceptions today, actually. Total for the Jets, doubled the season title.
Yeah. So the part of the problem is to get away from Rodgers, but why you could talk yourself into Rodgers for next year if you're one of those people, right? I land on that there's too much other stuff with Rodgers, and that's really why you can't keep him. If he had this like 100% approval rating in the building and was moldable, and when I say moldable, you got to take into account all the things here. It's not just, hey, Aaron Rodgers looks healthy and better, should we bring him back next year? I don't think that's the conversation. It's a very small portion of the conversation. The other portions of the conversation are how much money it's going to cost you in dead cap in the future, which is one slice, not the whole slice. 2, is he going to want to work with a new offensive coordinator that has new ideas? Because this offense, as better as it's looked, it needs new ideas. The run game's not overly
needs a running game.
Yeah, they're not very creative. And I don't know if he's going to be interested in that. From what we've heard the last couple of years, he's really not. Why do you think they had Hackett in the role they did? So Rodgers could do what he wants. So that's part of the issue as well. And then you run into, once again, do you think he's going to stay healthy? And if you don't, do you have a contingency plan that he's actually on board with, which is kind of giving the keys to somebody else for a couple games? There are so many things to unpack that it's hard to have 100% opinion either way without being a New York Jets employee, because there's so many unknowns from the outside, like health, and if he's moldable once again. And you kind of lean that he's not, because we just have the sample size of that. But maybe he has a revelation at 42 or whatever it is, because he knows, hey, if I don't, it's over. Like, no one's going to want me, so I have to make it work here. So, I mean, this is my where I land on this ultimately is, like, let the new general manager and head coach decide this, because it'll all be a part of a larger plan. If there is a larger plan where you have somebody come in here and say, you know what, I want to actually be able to win year one, but while also rebuilding, the competitive rebuild we like to call it, and they feel like they can get Rodgers on board, and they're just honest, like, hey man, you're here for one more year. If you start to, like, your play declines, whether that's health related or not, we're not going to be afraid to sit you, and we need you to run the offense that we're telling you to run. And like, if you don't like any of this, like, that's fine. We'll clap our hands and let you go, and hopefully you catch on somewhere else. But if you're on board with all that, we'll run this back for one more year. But I do wonder, and these are once again the things we don't know, like, there are some attitude questions there at times, some of the blame game stuff we've seen and how that rubs off. And so, you're right, Joe. Like, answering this question today, you still lean where
they don't need to.
You don't need to. See, now, if you beat the Bills, and which they're going to be like, what, 7.5 point underdogs, maybe more in that game, with the way the Bills are rolling right now. But at least it's now become an interesting conversation that the new general manager and head coach actually have to answer, where once upon a time it felt like, hey, you're the general manager and head coach, what's your plan at quarterback now that we're cutting Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, it's a little more open now. And what the main thing that can happen is the Woody Johnson leaks to the New York Post before the Jets-Bills game. Rodgers is coming back. And like just like he did, like, prematurely with Douglas and Saleh last year, it's like, no, let the season finish. Let your new head of football operations, your new GM, and your new head coach make that decision. And like you said, they need to be on the same page. And, you know, from an ego perspective, can Rodgers handle that? It's the center of the universe theory. Can you survive? Can a new regime get off on the right start if Rodgers is the center of the universe for the team and the center of the
dangerous.
locker room. And it's another year of the Aaron Rodgers show. And I'm not even blaming him. It's just who he is. Like, he's a celebrity. He is a Hall of Famer. And like, if he is on your team, you are the Aaron Rodgers team. You are not going to be the Mike Vrabel team, the Liam Cohn team, the Aaron Glenn team, although I know everyone's out on him after the last 2 weeks, which again is also premature. But the point kind of like generally stands. Like, it's a bigger conversation than just like, hey, he's healthy. And now he looks like the 12th best quarterback in the league, not the 22nd best quarterback in the league. There's more to it. And again, I'm not writing it off. I would still say more likely than not, he is not back. But you go beat the Rams and you score 30 points. You go like toe-to-toe with the Bills and score 30 points. And then you beat a Dolphins team that's probably shutting it down. It's more of like a 50-50 thing probably then. But let's get past just the Dolphins and the Jags and see what comes next overall with that. And look, Downing's been better than Hackett. And the Jets offensive coordinator hierarchy, I was joking off one of Zach's tweets earlier, like he's probably like their fourth best OC this millennium behind like Gailey, Morton, and like LaFleur when he was like cooking a little bit because the rest has been so grim. But the Jets are getting big plays right now, like not really thanks to like clever offensive design or tempo or different things. Like it's Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams like beating a blitz for a slant route for a 70-yard touchdown down the seam, or him throwing a back shoulder to Devontae Adams, or Garrett Wilson making a special play down the field. They're not like running this like elaborate screen game and like breaking things off all the time. Like it's a pretty simple offense. It's just a little more vertical now with Rodgers healthier, and he has a little more mobility, which of course opens up more things that they can do overall. I do, again, want to reiterate how encouraging it is to have a really good young center, to have a really good young left tackle. And I know it's a half season. We don't go too crazy, but
he looks
like
good. A real deal.
He looks the part. And, the offense, they're doing this with like Braylon Allen got hurt. Davis was okay. He had some moments. Brees is clearly not healthy, and it drives me crazy that they're playing him.
This is ridiculous.
It's literally mind-numbing. Like, shut the guy down. Like, I don't care. Just like, bringing a practice squad running back, there's just no reason at all. And they found a way to still get to that 32. And the defensive issues are not going to get solved this year. They need a new scheme. They are stubborn. They have no pass rush. They're soft up front. They have terrible discipline. They can't tackle. Like Jacksonville's plan was basically like, we're just going to throw smoke screens to Brian Thomas and just let him like run for 9 yards. And then and you're going to try to cover him with like Kendall Sheffield and Chuck Clark, and we're going to chew you up, which makes me a little terrified of what Sean McVay is going to do with Puka and Kupp and with Kieran Williams and Stafford. But it's, Rodgers is going to need to score in the 30s next week if the Jets want to be competitive in that game. But listen, it's better to be talking about wins than losses. And I think the Rodgers stuff, what I would encourage people is don't feel like you have to answer it today in either direction.
Let me ask you something. Because I do want to go through one topic of this game that's kind of doesn't matter at this point. But what was going through your head when there's a minute and 5-ish seconds left? It's first and goal at the 1. Jacksonville only has 2 timeouts left, and they turn around and hand Brees the ball to score. Not to
now again, in the moment, I was like, that didn't make any sense. They should have just ran the clock, made Jacksonville burn timeouts. So they didn't have any left. Now, I believe they had all 3. So you can say, okay, what were they going to do? Take 3 knees, kick a field goal with 57 seconds left. And
Jacksonville
then Jacksonville,
2.
They only had 2. Okay. So if they only had 2, I was getting some like mixed stuff in the moment of watching it. If it's only 2, then that was absolutely the wrong decision. Right?
It was terrible.
My initial tweet was like, holy shit, this is really stupid. Then I was reading some of our texts. I'm like, did I miss something? Did they have 3 timeouts? And the announcers kept harping on it. 2 timeouts means that was an insane decision. And reading Ulbricht's quote after about, I just wanted to be aggressive and get the points. It's like, no, like take the knee. And then Jacksonville gets the ball back with 11 seconds left with no timeouts. They clearly let Brees score. And I was like, if it was any quarterback besides Mac Jones, because Mac Jones just can't press the football down the field, I was like, they're probably going to lose this game on a touchdown and 2-point conversion. Like if they were playing Miami from the week before, they're probably going to lose 33-32. So they have been so bad with game management and clock management. never did the thought cross my mind that because Devontae was trying to score, and once he didn't score, I'm like, they're going to try to score a touchdown. There's no way that Rodgers is coming out and like taking a knee, and like they just don't think in this way. Like Ulbricht's not capable of doing it.
Though.
It's they're such low stake games. Like it really truly didn't matter whether the Jets won or lost today. Like it really like did it. It was not that important of a game, but that's a much, much, much bigger discussion if the Jets are 7-5 right now or something, because these are like, it's in such we always talk about like infrastructure and, it's like scouting and analytics and sports medicine, but like the analytics game management portion of it, making sure everyone gets those situations where Jacksonville with 2 timeouts, it's a very straightforward thing. Like you leave no margin of error. And they botched this in the Miami game, and you could say it was an accident and Devontae, should have fell in bounds, but you don't even put yourself in that situation. Like you find a different kind of play. This is how you end up very bad in one possession games. And a new head coach has to have it be a point of emphasis. I've watched them flub so many late game situations that it just kind of rolled off my back, because once I was like, whatever it is, they're going to do it wrong. And it was less of a panic situation just because Matt, he had just a ridiculous amount of scrambles today for a limited athletic quarterback. I just, that situation is not conducive, even against this version of the Jets defense, of him going down the field. So it's really bad. Ulbrich, unfortunately, I don't think is going to be a head coach in this league. Downing, you'd like to see him on it a little bit. Like they have Downing, they have Carter, ostensibly they have Hackett in the booth still working here. Maybe he doesn't even come on game days. Rodgers is a smart dude. Like he should know better too, I would think. Like come back to the sideline.
Right.
They will be in another close game this year, one of the remaining 3, probably the Miami game, and they will probably flub the situation again. It is a little mind-boggling, although I will say, watching the other games, I'm amazed how many teams struggle with situational football. Even Campbell doing the onside kick today when he did, that the Bills effectively returned for a touchdown. You see like 2 or 3 plays, even with the really good teams, where it's such a competitive advantage if you can figure those things out. What were you guys like screaming in the studio with like, what the hell are they doing?
We could not believe what we witnessed. And to be fair, we were saying it pre-snap. My take was the only out that Ulbrich would have in that scenario that he can't say publicly is he wanted nothing to do with sending the kicking unit out there, because not only Carlson missing the previous kick, but it could be blocked, the kicker's in his head. The problem I have with that is what you do is you kneel it twice, so they burn both their timeouts. Then it's 3rd and goal at the 2, and then you try to run it in. Yeah. Because then if you run it in and score, they burn both their timeouts and an extra 12 seconds, and now they need to score a touchdown with less time and no timeouts. And if you didn't score the touchdown, then you got to kick. Like you just have to. If your kicker can't make a field goal dead center from 2 yards out that most people in the stands can make, then you shouldn't be playing the game. So my take was you could have had it both ways. Like if you were scared to the only thing you don't do is score on the first play. It's the only thing you don't do.
And Jacksonville very clearly was like,
oh no, they didn't.
We're not trying to tackle you.
So like in the grand scheme, it doesn't matter because Ulbrich won't be the coach next year and the season's been over mathematically. But as somebody who just wants the organization to be a smart football organization, it bothered me a lot in the moment. And I quickly brushed it aside to talk about the positive things of the game on post game. But they need somebody that basically has a headset on that's up next to the offensive coordinator in the booth, that if they don't have a coach that's equipped to that, like I feel like there are obviously coaches that are equipped for in-game situations. They need to be, on the comms, mapping out every scenario. They're not even aware of what's going on.
I don't think they knew the overtime rules last week. I said this, like watching their sideline, like they didn't know the overtime rules. And
it's crazy. Like makes you wonder what they did in camp and how they practice. And cause the situational awareness or the lack thereof is, it's jarring. It's really jarring. And I don't know. It's something that should be top of mind for the next hire.
Yeah, it's like Herm Edwards was right in theory when he had Dick Curl. It was just the wrong guy, and it never worked. But the thought of having like a game management consultant, maybe get someone a little younger, a little more like forward thinking for the role next time. Like Dick Curl was like 78 when he took the role. At the time, I remember him. I know that's not a knock on Dick Curl. I'm sure he's a smart dude, but like go get like a Cornell graduate or something and like stick him. Yeah, like let someone nerd out on it.
That runs the tables of every percentage of scenarios of what the highest outcome is in the moment. And if their brain can't process that in real time, then they're not the right person. So I don't know. But the thing is, that's also something that you can't be blindsided by during the game. You need to be prepared for every single situation that can happen to you on Sundays. And it feels like the Jets are prepared for very few situations.
They're just kind of like flying by the seat of their pants.
Out there, like, here we go.
Just out there, like having Rodgers bomb it around a little bit and seeing what happens. And like, it's just like vibes and like, it's a light game plan. And look, the Jets, as we close, the Jets have been in a very similar spot to this many times in the drought, right? And they've won this game a lot where it's late in the season. They're playing a team who's also not good. It's kind of entertaining and they win and the fans fight, whether it's good or bad. There's also always the little like late season subsection where do you project the short 4 or 5 games to the full sample size and like buy into that? They did this with Gino. They did this with Sam. They did it with Zach. Where you'd have a game like this even last year, like the Jets beat the Texans with Zach Wilson and they beat him like 30-0. And Zach Wilson was the AFC Offensive Player of the Week. Yeah. And everyone was like, well, maybe they should just, maybe Zach's better than we gave him credit for. Look at this. Look at what happened. Then a few weeks later, they beat Washington and they put up, that was with Simeon, a little bit of a different situation, but everyone's like, did we really want to win that game? You go back, Zach had the big game against Tampa. Darnold had the big games against Houston and the Packers late in the year. Gino had the perfect game against Miami. We've seen this movie before. Now, usually where this movie heads is that they're probably going to lose to the Rams and the Bills. Now, if they don't, do you overreact or is it considered an overreaction if you could like go hang with one of those teams or beat them? We just have to keep in perspective with today. While it was fun and it was good to see points, and you got to give credit when it's due. Like Rodgers has been good the last few weeks. Yeah. I would say like he was good in the Seattle game up until the Leonard Williams pick 6 when he missed Garrett, and then it got real ugly from there. But the last 2 games he's been good.
He's throwing the ball down the field finally.
Yeah, they threw a 9 route and drew pass interference. I've been waiting. I feel like 5 years to see that happen, but great to finally see it happen. You have to be able to acknowledge, like, yeah, he's been good. He looks better. But also, like, I want to see it now against the Rams. I want to see it against the Bills in Buffalo because that's who you're competing with. Those are the kind of teams you're competing with next year. You look at the Jets' 4 wins this year. They beat the Titans, who are one of the 5 worst teams in football. They beat the Jags, who are one of the 5 worst teams in football. They beat the Pats, who are one of the 5 worst teams in football. And they beat the Texans, who are like, okay, and like they're going to win the division because it's like a bad division. They're probably going to finish 9-8 or whatever. So they haven't had that like, wow, like that's the win that like, this is what we thought. Beating Buffalo. The Rams are not quite on that level. Like you're getting the Rams flying across the country, but the Rams are good. They're well coached and like they're right in the mix for a playoff spot. So they win that game. The discourse gets a little more spiked up. Any final thoughts before we wrap? I have not written post-game party on a pod since Halloween.
Oh my God, it's crazy. Post-game party. I'm just soaking up the offensive line film right now. Yes. And I'm in the stage where I'm kind of rooting for shootouts because it's fun watching the team score a lot of points. But if they end up, ultimately with only 4 wins and they're picking around 6th or 5th, and they end up with Mason Graham or a player I really like, I'll be really happy and excited to watch that player next year and build this team. Because, like you said, these wins are inevitable. There's some interesting ones ahead. Like Jacksonville still has to play Tennessee and the Raiders again. So somebody has to lose and somebody has to win, which means the draft order is not over yet. If the Giants are one of the worst football teams I've ever seen in my life, by the way. Yeah. I literally one of the worst football teams I've ever seen in my life. They're worse than the Adam Gase Jets, I think. Yeah, I know. They
rarefied air. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Giants will be picking number 1. But like, who cares about the Giants and the Raiders? Because we feel like Shadur Sanders and Cam Ward, they're not locks to go there, but you feel pretty confident that's how it's going to somehow land. So what you care about is after that, the mix of the, somebody will get Travis Hunter ahead of the Jets, and then we'll kind of see how this shakes out. where the Jets have this oddly unique advantage. I don't think this is a great tackle class. I don't. But where they have this oddly unique advantage all of a sudden is that you love the left tackle. And if you sign Morgan Moses, you don't have to draft a tackle in the first round. You could actually go in and maybe you hit on a day two guy behind Morgan Moses or whatever it may be. And you have a little bit more freedom up at the top with a maybe top 7-ish, top 6 pick. I know they pick 8 today. I don't think they're going to win another game. I could definitely be wrong. Now, I don't think they're going to be embarrassing, by the way. The defense is pretty bad, and I'm fascinated to see how that translates against 3 offenses that in theory should have success against them. Miami looked really bad today, and we'll see what Miami does with Tua the last week. It's hard to speak on any of that. But the Rams' offense is rolling right now. Buffalo's offense is rolling right now. Like, those are bad matchups for the Jets defensively. But the Jets should be able to score some points in those games. So you lose 2 out of the last 3 or 3 out of the last 3, but you score some points. And then you're picking 6th, we'll say, right now. Because say this Tennessee team beats Jacksonville. Then they have 4 wins. The Jets have 4 wins. The Jets would have the higher strength of schedule, so I believe the Jets would be picking. That would probably put them lower than them. It'll be interesting how it shakes out. I could do like 80 scenarios here, and this isn't the time or place for it. The point is the Jets will probably be picking in the top 7-ish, I think, when all's said and done. And this draft, while it's not an exciting draft, there are 7 good players. Like, they're going to end up with a good player. And I don't know. It was such a long, rough season and disappointing season this year, but I'm starting to get back the optimism because the roster is talented in areas like Garrett Wilson is good. Sauce Gardner's getting his confidence back. Olu looks awesome. Tippmann looks good. Simpson looks good. Like, so many important areas look. Will McDonald looks good. And they have big holes, but coaching is such a giant hole on this team that I think people will be really surprised if they even get competent coaching next year, how much better things can look. And there's nothing to do with Rodgers here or not, where you start to feel just a little bit better about the future. You don't feel like you're in this black hole of, God, our 53-man roster sucks, and this is going to take 4 years.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to sum it up. And I'm curious to see how they come out at home next week off a win, right? That's what they have it. Last time they were coming off a win, they laid down and died to the Cardinals. And the time before that, the time before that, they lost, the Broncos, which is when this whole trouble started, really. So let's see how they react to a win. And, they'll be home underdogs, I would imagine. How many points we'll see. But we'll be back this week.
5.5.
Yeah, 5.5 feels about right. It should be a high-scoring game. Hit those overs. We'll be back, normal schedule this week. Other guys tomorrow, flight plan tomorrow, pod Tuesday night from Connor and I, War Room Wednesday. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Enjoy your post-game party victory podcast, and we will talk to you soon.